Introduction. Friends, if you want to watch the exciting and highly anticipated movie Thunderbolts 2025 in English, make sure you like this video. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our updates. In today's video, we're diving deep into the world of Thunderbolts 2025. We'll cover what this movie is all about, where you can watch it, and all the fascinating details surrounding it. I'm going to tell you everything, from which OTT platform or satellite channel you'll find this movie on, to interesting behind-the-scenes facts. We'll break down the technical aspects, the music department, pre-production process, filming locations, post-production, budget, and the expected box office performance. We'll also walk through the storyline, and I'll share a quick review to give you a taste of what to expect. Plus, we'll discuss the cast, the actors' performances, and which characters they bring to life in the movie. So, friends, I invite you to stick with me until the end of this video to get the full scoop on Thunderbolts 2025. Let's jump right in and get started. Plot and narrative. Thunderbolts 2025. Alright friends, buckle up, because Thunderbolts 2025 takes us on a wild, unpredictable ride through the darker corners of the Marvel Universe. And I'm here to guide you through every twist, turn, and explosive moment. So, what's the setup? Imagine a team of misfits, antiheroes, and reformed villains. People who aren't exactly Earth's mightiest heroes, but they're the only ones available. We're talking about characters like Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, US Agent, Taskmaster, Ghost, and Red Guardian, all pulled together under the leadership of Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Already, you know this isn't going to be your typical save-the-world mission with shiny hero speeches and perfect teamwork. This is messy, gritty, and sometimes hilarious. The movie kicks off with a bang. We're thrown straight into the action. No slow build-up, no long-winded exposition. The team is already on a mission, and right away, you feel the tension. They don't trust each other. They don't even like each other. Everyone's got their own agenda, their own grudges, and their own scars. And this is where the movie starts to play with the narrative. Instead of following one clear hero's journey, Thunderbolts flips between perspectives, letting us peek into the minds and motives of different team members. One moment you're seeing things through Bucky's hardened, haunted eyes. The next, you're with Yelena, cracking jokes but hiding deeper wounds. Then you're with Ghost, slipping between phases, literally and emotionally. The central conflict? It's not just about stopping the bad guy, though yes, there's a big, bad threat they're chasing. It's about whether these broken, damaged people can actually work together. This team isn't built on trust and loyalty, it's built on necessity. And the narrative keeps pushing that tension. Can they cooperate when things go south? Will someone betray the mission? Will their personal demons sabotage everything? One of the coolest things is how the story balances big, chaotic action with personal, emotional stakes. Sure, there are giant fights, betrayals, and high-tech showdowns. You'll get all the Marvel spectacle you're expecting. But then, just when you think it's all about the explosions, the movie slows down and hits you with a surprisingly quiet, intimate scene. Maybe it's Bucky wrestling with his past as an assassin. Maybe it's Ghost facing her isolation. Maybe it's Red Guardian trying, and hilariously failing, to prove he's still relevant. These moments don't follow a predictable rhythm. They pop up unexpectedly, giving the movie an almost unpredictable emotional beat. There are key turning points sprinkled like landmines. There's a moment where a betrayal cuts deep, not just on the mission level, but emotionally. There's a mission failure that nearly shatters the team. And there's a final, desperate gamble where every character has to confront their biggest fear or flaw. And while the structure seems straightforward on the surface, mission, obstacle, climax, the layers underneath play with trust, shifting alliances, and moral gray zones. And let's not forget the humor. Unlike the squeaky clean Avengers, the Thunderbolts bicker, they mess up, they throw punches at each other even when they're supposed to be allies. The movie uses this chaotic energy not just for laughs but to deepen the tension. You're never quite sure if they'll pull it together or completely implode. In the end, the narrative doesn't just tell a story about stopping a world-ending threat. It tells a story about broken people trying to find purpose in a world that doesn't believe in them. And whether they succeed or fail, the journey is packed with emotional punches, explosive twists, and some unforgettable character moments. So, friends, if you're ready for a Marvel movie that isn't about polished heroes but about the rough edges, the moral messiness, and the uneasy alliances, Thunderbolts 2025 delivers that in spades. And the way it unfolds, expect the unexpected. Are you excited to see how this wild team holds together? Character development, Thunderbolts 2025. Alright friends, let's dive into the heart of Thunderbolts 2025, the characters. Because let me tell you, this movie isn't just about action and explosions. It's about who these people are, how messy they are, and how much, or little, they change when thrown together. First up, we've got Yelena Belova. She's sharp, sarcastic, and constantly rolling her eyes at everyone. But don't be fooled. Beneath that snarky exterior, she's carrying deep emotional scars. Yelena's arc is fascinating because, at first, she acts like she doesn't care about this team. She's used to working alone, making her own rules. But as the story unfolds, we start to see cracks. She's not just here to punch bad guys, she's here to prove something. Maybe to herself, maybe to the ghost of Natasha Romanoff. And watching her shift from lone wolf to reluctant team player is one of the movie's best threads. Then we've got Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Oh boy, this guy is a walking storm cloud of regret and trauma. From the first moment he appears, you can feel the weight he carries, all the people he's hurt, all the missions he wishes he could erase. But here's the twist. Bucky isn't the team leader, even though he's the most experienced fighter. Instead, he's grappling with what it means to follow, to trust others, to let himself be part of something without slipping back into old habits. His growth isn't loud or showy, it's in the small moments. The way he hesitates before pulling the trigger, the way he shields a teammate without thinking, the way his scowl softens just slightly when someone cracks a joke. Now, US Agent John Walker. Oh, he's the wild card. Remember, this is the guy who wants to be Captain America but keeps falling short. In this movie, his motivation is all tangled up in pride, resentment, and the desperate need to prove himself. He starts off puffed up, acting like he's the best, but the narrative chips away at that ego. His arc isn't about redemption, at least not right away. It's about peeling back the layers and seeing if there's a real hero under all that insecurity and bluster. Let's not forget Taskmaster, a character shrouded in mystery and silence. Here we get more insight into their inner world. Taskmaster isn't just a mimic or a weapon. They're a person trying to reclaim agency after years of being controlled. Their journey is subtle, woven through body language, shifting loyalties, and those rare moments when the mask slips, and you see the human underneath. Ghost is another standout. She's probably the most emotionally distant at first, literally phasing in and out, physically and emotionally disconnected from the team. But as the plot unfolds, we see her slowly anchor herself, bit by bit. Her motivation isn't grand or flashy. It's survival, the need for stability, maybe even belonging. Watching her open up, even just a little, gives the film some of its most delicate, surprising moments. Red Guardian is, hands down, the comic relief. But don't underestimate him. Yes, he's loud, boastful, and constantly bragging about his past glory. But underneath that bluster is a man wrestling with irrelevance. His character development is both funny and a little heartbreaking. He's trying so hard to matter, to feel useful again, and the movie gives him moments to shine that go beyond just cracking jokes. The relationships between these characters are pure chaos in the best way. They bicker, they clash, they roll their eyes at each other. But slowly, grudgingly, they start forming connections. Not deep, perfect friendships, but small acts of trust, unexpected moments of vulnerability. Yelena teasing Bucky but also watching his back. Walker butting heads with Bucky but learning to respect him. Ghost and Taskmaster sharing a silent moment of mutual understanding. These little threads weave together, shaping the emotional core of the movie. What's brilliant is that the movie doesn't force neat, tidy character transformations. Not everyone ends up fixed. Some characters grow, others backslide, some stay stubbornly the same. But by the end, they've all been changed by the experience, by the missions they've survived, the betrayals they've endured, the people they've come to, grudgingly, trust. So, friends, if you're here for characters that are layered, flawed, and constantly butting heads, Thunderbolts 2025 gives you all that and more. It's not just about the mission, it's about who these people are when the masks come off and whether they can forge something real out of all their broken pieces. Are you ready to watch these chaotic misfits collide? Performances. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright friends, let's talk performances, because Thunderbolts, 2025, doesn't just lean on flashy action and cool costumes. It thrives on how the actors own their characters and light up the screen. First, we have to start with Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova. She is an absolute scene stealer. Every line she delivers, whether it's a deadpan joke, a sharp retort, or a raw, emotional confession, feels completely alive. Pugh has this amazing ability to balance humor with heartache. She can make you laugh 1 second and hit you with a gut punch of vulnerability the next. She keeps Yelena sharp-edged but also gives her layers of grief, loyalty, and longing, making her one of the most compelling presences in the film. Then we get Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. Oh man, Stan brings a quiet intensity that's hard to look away from. He's not the loudest character, but every glance, every twitch of his face, tells you what's going on inside. There's this weight, this history, hanging on Bucky's shoulders, and Stan never lets you forget it. But what's really great here is how he softens Bucky just slightly, showing us that, beneath all the stoicism, there's still a man trying to heal, trying to connect, even if he barely knows how. Wyatt Russell as John Walker/U.S. Agent is another powerhouse. Wyatt plays him with this tightly coiled mix of arrogance, frustration, and hidden vulnerability. You can see the character's desperate need for validation simmering just under the surface. He's cocky, sure, but Russell also gives us moments of doubt and conflict that make Walker more than just a puffed-up soldier. He's a man wrestling with his own sense of worth, and it's fascinating to watch. David Harbour as Red Guardian is pure gold. He brings a hilarious, almost self-deprecating charm to the role. Harbour leans into the character's big personality, making him lovable even when he's obnoxious. But, and here's the magic, he doesn't play it flat as just comic relief. Harbour sneaks in little moments of sadness, moments where you see a man who wants so badly to matter again, to prove himself, and it gives the performance real emotional depth. Olga Kurylenko as Taskmaster finally gets a chance to shine here after the limited role in Black Widow. Kurylenko gives Taskmaster a quiet, haunting presence. She doesn't need tons of dialogue to make you feel the weight of everything Taskmaster's been through. The physicality, the subtle gestures, the tension in her movements all help build a character who's trying to reclaim her identity after years of being a living weapon. Hannah John Kamen as Ghost is another standout. She plays the role with this edgy, jittery energy. You can feel the character's instability and desperation. But what's striking is how John Kamen finds the humanity in Ghost, showing us the fear, the loneliness, the longing to belong that drives her. Her performance brings out the emotional fragility beneath Ghost's hardened surface. And let's not forget the supporting players like Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. She's sly, manipulative, and completely magnetic on screen. Louis-Dreyfus plays Val with this perfect mix of charm and menace, making you constantly question what her true motives are. Every scene she's in crackles with tension because you know she's always 2 steps ahead. What really makes the performances sing is the chemistry. These actors bounce off each other in ways that feel authentic. The bickering, the uneasy alliances, the grudging respect. Whether it's Yelena and Bucky forming an unlikely bond, Walker and Bucky clashing over leadership, or Red Guardian trying to win approval from anyone who will listen, the cast makes every dynamic feel rich and believable. No one feels wasted here. Every actor brings something unique, and together, they elevate the whole film. The emotional beats hit harder, the humor lands sharper, and the tense moments crackle more because the actors fully embody these layered, messy characters. Watching them play off each other is half the fun. It's like watching a powder keg where you're never sure which spark will set it off. So friends, if you're ready for performances that aren't just good but electric, Thunderbolts, 2025, delivers in spades. Who do you think will steal the show for you? Direction, Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright friends, let's pull back the curtain and talk about the one steering this chaotic ship, the director. Because in Thunderbolts, 2025, the director's fingerprints are everywhere, shaping the tone, the mood, and the entire personality of the film. First, let's talk about tone. This is not your polished, feel-good superhero romp. The director makes sure we feel the grit. There's a darker, rougher edge here, but it's not grim-dark. It's more like watching a group of characters stumble through a morally gray world where the lines between good and bad are constantly blurring. And yet, just when things get heavy, the director lets the humor slip in. Sharp, sometimes awkward, sometimes biting. It's this balancing act of tension and levity that keeps the movie from sinking under its own weight. Now, the mood. Right from the opening scenes, you can feel the mood pulsing through the visuals and sound. There's a sense of unease, of unpredictability. The director leans into that by using tight, intimate shots when characters are in conflict, making you feel their discomfort. But then, bam! Wide, sweeping shots when the team is thrown into big action set pieces, showing just how small and vulnerable they are in the face of massive stakes. The contrast keeps you on edge, flipping between claustrophobic tension and sprawling chaos. Stylistically, there are some bold choices here. The director plays with perspective, sometimes shifting the camera to follow one character's point of view in a scene, then suddenly snapping to another, giving the feeling that no single character owns this story. This isn't Bucky's movie or Yelena's movie or Walker's movie. It's everyone's mess. The editing reflects that, sometimes cutting fast between different perspectives to heighten tension or confusion, and sometimes slowing everything down in key emotional moments, letting you sit with the character's pain or hesitation. And let me tell you, the shot composition is on point. There are some jaw-dropping moments where the framing tells you as much as the dialogue. A lone figure silhouetted against a ruined landscape. A mirrored reflection showing two teammates at odds, standing on opposite sides. A close-up on a trembling hand just before a critical decision. The director knows when to go big and when to pull in tight, using visual language to hammer home emotional beats. Pacing is another clever trick here. The movie doesn't follow a simple rise and fall rhythm. Instead, the director structures the story like a series of surges, bursts of high-stakes action followed by sudden lulls where the characters regroup, argue, or face their own demons. It's not about keeping you on a steady track. It's about making you feel the exhaustion, the unpredictability, the stop-and-start chaos of a group of antiheroes trying to function as a team. The narrative vision really shines in how the director refuses to sand off the characters' rough edges. No one is painted as the clear hero or the perfect leader. The director leans into their flaws, making sure we see every bad decision, every moment of doubt, every crack in the team's foundation. But instead of dragging the movie down, this messiness becomes its charm. You're not watching a polished Avengers-style squad. You're watching a gang of misfits figure things out in real time, often failing, sometimes succeeding, always changing. And let's not forget the world building. The director creates a setting that feels lived in, grimy, and a little off-kilter. Whether it's the underground facilities, the war-torn battle zones, or the shadowy government offices, every location feels textured and specific. It's not just background scenery. It's part of the mood, adding layers to the story's atmosphere. So friends, if you're the kind of viewer who loves spotting the details, the way a camera lingers on a character's hesitation, the way a well-timed silence speaks louder than an explosion, the way tension and humor weave together, the direction in Thunderbolts, 2025, gives you a lot to sink your teeth into. This isn't just a Marvel movie, it's a director's playground, and you'll feel it in every shot, every beat, every unexpected turn. Who's ready to pay attention to the craft behind the chaos? Cinematography, Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright friends, buckle up because we're about to dive into the look of Thunderbolts, 2025. The camera work, the lighting, the visual punch that makes this movie so much more than just another superhero brawl. The cinematography here isn't just point and shoot. It's part of the storytelling. And oh, it delivers. Let's start with the camera angles. This movie loves playing with perspective. In the action scenes, the camera gets right up in the chaos. Handheld shots, shaky close-ups, sudden whip pans, all designed to make you feel like you're right there, ducking bullets and dodging punches. But then, in the quieter, more emotional moments, the camera pulls back. It gives the characters space, framing them small against vast, empty backdrops, making them look isolated, vulnerable, or just plain lost. It's not just showing what's happening, it's showing how they feel. And those angles. You'll notice how often the cinematographer tilts the camera just slightly off-center in tense scenes. It creates this subtle nagging sense that something's wrong, The world feels crooked, off balance, just like the Thunderbolts themselves. During key confrontations, the camera sometimes dips low, shooting up to make characters look larger than life, towering, almost monstrous. But other times, it looks down on them, making them seem small, crushed by the weight of their choices. Now, lighting. This movie knows how to play with light and shadow. The Thunderbolts don't operate in shiny, well-lit Avengers headquarters. They're skulking around dimly lit bunkers, shadowy alleyways, flickering neon-lit streets. The lighting gives everything a moody, gritty vibe, with harsh contrasts and deep shadows that reflect the characters' inner turmoil. One particularly striking motif is the use of silhouette. Characters standing in doorways, light blazing behind them, their features lost in darkness. It's symbolic. These people are haunted by who they are, sometimes just shadows of themselves. And when the light does break through, oh, you feel it. Think of a battle raging under stormy skies. Then suddenly the clouds split and sunlight floods the scene, casting everything in stark, golden relief. Or a tense, low-lit conversation in a cramped room where a single shaft of light highlights just one character's face, drawing your attention to their subtle reactions. The cinematography knows when to go dark and brooding and when to hit you with a sudden, breathtaking splash of beauty. Let's talk about framing, how the shots are composed. The movie often frames characters at the edges, leaving negative space that adds tension and unease. A character pacing alone in the corner of a wide shot, a team divided physically by the frame. It's all telling you something about the relationships and conflicts without needing a word of dialogue. During the big team moments, the cinematographer loves to bring everyone into the frame together, but not always lined up neatly. Sometimes one's turned away, another is slightly out of focus, again, reinforcing that this isn't a perfectly united front, but a messy, shifting alliance. And oh, there are visually striking moments galore. Picture a slow-motion shot of Ghost phasing through an explosion, the fire curling around her like a living thing. Or Taskmaster flipping through a rain-soaked battlefield, every drop caught in razor-sharp focus. Or Yelena framed in close-up, her eyes glistening with barely held-back emotion, while the background blurs into nothingness. These are the kinds of shots that stick in your mind, not just because they look cool, though they do, but because they carry emotional and narrative weight. Atmosphere? This movie drips with it. The cinematography wraps you in tension during the build-ups, beauty during the quiet, reflective beats, and raw, kinetic energy during the fights. It's like every frame is designed to pull you deeper into the world, not just showing you what's happening, but making you feel it, right in your gut. So friends, if you're the type to watch a movie with one eye on the story and the other on the visuals, Thunderbolts 2025 offers a feast. Every shadow, every angle, every carefully composed frame is part of the experience. Keep your eyes sharp. The cinematography isn't just background here, it's a character in its own right. What kind of shot do you think will stick with you the most? Editing and pacing. Thunderbolts 2025. Alright friends, let's pull back the curtain and peek at the rhythm machine behind Thunderbolts 2025. The editing. You might not think about it while you're watching, but the way a movie is cut together can make or break how you experience the story. And here, oh, it's a ride. First, let's talk flow. This film does not crawl. The editing snaps you from one moment to the next with just enough time to catch your breath, but never so long that you start checking your watch. The opening sequences waste no time. They drop you right into the messy, chaotic world of these morally gray antiheroes, and the cuts are sharp, fast, and punchy. You jump between team members, locations, and problems with almost whiplash speed. But here's the magic. It never feels sloppy or confusing. The editors know exactly how long to linger on a scene before yanking you forward, and they keep that tension tight. But don't think it's all speed and momentum. The pacing flexes. When the story needs to slow down, when emotions crack open, when secrets spill, when characters sit quietly with regret or doubt, the editing lets it breathe. You get these long, lingering shots where the weight of silence says more than any punch or explosion. These slower beats are scattered through the film like little islands of calm, giving you space to process before the next storm hits. Now, the transitions. This is where the film gets a little playful. The editors weave in creative cuts that connect scenes not just by time, but by emotion. For example, a character slamming a fist on a table might cut directly to a hammer pounding in a completely different scene, keeping the emotional thread taut across locations. Or you'll see a close-up of someone's terrified eyes that cuts immediately to another character's expression of guilt or suspicion, even if they're miles apart. These aren't just practical transitions. They're mood-driven connections that deepen the narrative impact. The rhythm of the editing is part of what makes the team dynamic pop. When the characters are arguing, plotting, or clashing, the cuts speed up, layering reactions, interruptions, and escalating tensions on top of each other. It makes you feel like you're inside the group's chaos. But when the team clicks into sync, especially during big action sequences, the editing smooths out. You get these slick, almost dance-like montages where the camera tracks each member's moves, letting you feel the rare, precious moments when they operate as one. There are definitely visceral, tension-filled stretches where the editing tightens like a noose. Imagine a sequence where a mission goes sideways. The cuts start coming faster, the sound design sharpens, the frames get shorter and shorter, and your heart rate spikes right along with the characters. And just when it's about to overwhelm you, boom, the editors cut to a still, quiet moment, sometimes with just the sound of heavy breathing or distant echoes. That push-pull rhythm keeps you hooked, never quite sure when to brace or when to exhale. One particularly fun trick the editors use is layered storytelling, cutting between different subplots happening simultaneously, letting tension build in parallel. You might be watching Bucky in a tense standoff while Yelena hacks into a system somewhere else, and the cuts bounce between them in a way that makes you feel like both stories are about to collide. This cross-cutting gives the film a sense of constant forward momentum, like the whole story is rushing toward an inevitable clash. And here's something worth noticing: the montages. Oh yes, you get the classic misfit team preps for mission montage, but the editing injects personality into it. Quick flashes of awkward mistakes, last-minute fixes, stolen glances, small human moments that keep it from feeling like a generic action reel. These aren't just cool cut sequences, they're character moments, and the editors make sure they land. So friends, if you love a movie that plays with pace, speeding you up, slowing you down, throwing you off balance just enough to keep you on the edge of your seat, Thunderbolts 2025 is a masterclass in how editing shapes the pulse of a film. Every cut, every pause, every sudden shift is designed to pull you deeper, keep you guessing, and make you feel the story in your bones. Which do you think will hit you harder? The breathless action cuts or those rare, devastating moments of stillness? Soundtrack and score, Thunderbolts 2025. Alright friends, let's turn up the volume and dive into one of the sneakiest, most powerful parts of Thunderbolts 2025, the music. You might think you're watching a Marvel antihero movie, but what you're really doing is feeling it. And so much of that feeling comes from the soundtrack and score wrapping their invisible hands around your heart and squeezing. First off, the atmosphere. The moment the opening credits roll, the music sets the tone. Forget the soaring, triumphant horns you hear in classic superhero flicks. This score is darker, grittier, laced with tension. It's full of low, pulsing beats and uneasy strings, like the soundtrack is whispering in your ear. You better watch yourself, because nobody's coming to save the day here. The composer knows exactly how to turn the emotional screws, weaving in subtle layers that make each scene feel heavier, sharper, and sometimes downright uncomfortable. But here's where it gets really fun: the recurring motifs. Each major character seems to carry their own musical signature. A little phrase, a specific instrument, a repeated rhythm. Maybe you notice a cold, metallic clank every time Taskmaster's on screen, or a ghostly echo whenever Ghost phases through a wall. Maybe Bucky's scenes carry a mournful, restrained melody, reflecting all that guilt and history weighing him down. Yelena. She probably gets a punchy, sarcastic sting of music when she enters, playful but edged with danger. These motifs pop up again and again, threading through the story like musical fingerprints, reminding you who's who and what emotional baggage they're dragging behind them. And oh, let's talk about the big emotional beats. When the team's fractured, the music splinters too. Dissonant notes, uneasy silences, sounds that make your stomach knot. But when they finally come together, and you know they do, at least for a moment, the score swells, layering in harmonies that feel earned, not forced. There's a particularly gut-punching scene where the music fades almost to nothing. Just a delicate, trembling piano line underneath a conversation you know is about to break someone's heart. That use of near silence? It's brilliant. It draws you in closer, makes you hang on every word, every breath. Now, on the flip side, there's the needle drops. The soundtrack moments where the filmmakers blast a perfectly chosen song that slams the mood into overdrive. Picture a tense infiltration scene suddenly punctuated by a gritty, pounding rock track that amps up your pulse. Or a chaotic escape sequence set to an unexpected, off-kilter pop song that somehow makes the whole thing feel fun and anarchic. These aren't just background noise. They're statements, moments where the music becomes a character all on its own, shouting, "Yeah, this is who we are." What's genius is how the score blends with the action. It never overpowers the story. In fact, sometimes you don't even realize it's working on you, until you notice your shoulders are tight, your heart's pounding, or your eyes are stinging because somehow, without a word of dialogue, the music just told you how to feel. That's the sign of a soundtrack doing its job. It sneaks under your skin, shapes your experience, and lingers in your head long after the credits roll. And let's not skip over the expert use of silence. Sometimes, the boldest move the composer makes is pulling the sound away altogether. No swelling strings, no pounding drums, just raw, exposed silence. In those moments, you hear every rustle, every breath, every creak of the floorboards, and it's nerve-wracking. Silence here is a weapon, making you hyper-aware, making you wait, ratcheting up the suspense until the music crashes back in like a wave. So, friends, if you're the type who loves to let the soundtrack wash over you, picking out the little themes, noticing how the music twists your emotions, Thunderbolts 2025 is packed with sonic treasures. Whether it's the creeping dread, the explosive energy, the bittersweet tenderness, or the perfect song blasting over the chaos, the music shapes every beat of this wild ride. Which musical moment do you think will leave you humming long after the movie ends? Themes and messages. Thunderbolts 2025. Alright friends, now we're getting into the juicy stuff. Not just what Thunderbolts 2025 shows you, but what it's really about. Beneath the punches, explosions, sharp banter, and high-stakes missions, this movie has some seriously meaty themes simmering under the surface, and they hit harder than you might expect. First up, the big, unavoidable theme, redemption. Every single Thunderbolt is carrying a suitcase stuffed full of past mistakes, regrets, betrayals, and personal failures. Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier himself, is practically the poster child for a man trying to crawl out from under the mountain of his past. Yelena, she's still finding her place after years of being used as a weapon. Taskmaster, haunted by control and loss. Ghost, half-phased between worlds, physically and emotionally. This whole team is a collection of characters who don't know if they deserve a second chance, and the film keeps poking that wound. What's beautiful is how the movie doesn't offer them a simple redemption arc. It's not like, oh, save the world and you're good now. No. The film keeps asking, can you ever really undo what you've done? Can you own your past and still move forward? It's messy, it's complicated, and it makes for some gut-wrenching moments where you see these characters wrestling with their own identities. Then there's the theme of trust and betrayal. This is a team built on shaky ground. Ex-villains, morally gray fighters, people used to looking out for themselves. The movie plays a constant game of who can you really trust? Not just within the team, but with the larger forces pulling their strings. Government backers, shady leaders, hidden agendas. The Thunderbolts are always half a step away from being pawns or getting double-crossed. Watching them navigate this web, you start to feel the tension. Are they fighting with each other or against each other? And when betrayal comes, and oh, it does, it stings because the film has layered in all these fragile connections you were rooting for. There's also a sharp, timely exploration of moral ambiguity. This isn't a clean-cut Avengers mission with a clear good guy/bad guy dynamic. The Thunderbolts operate in the gray, doing the dirty work nobody else wants to touch. But the film constantly makes you question, at what point does doing the wrong thing for the right reason stop being noble and just become wrong? There are moments where you, as the viewer, have to sit with the discomfort of what these characters are doing. Are they heroes? Are they just survivors? Or are they something else entirely? Another surprising layer? Identity and control. Several Thunderbolts, especially characters like Taskmaster and Ghost, have been shaped or twisted by forces beyond their control. The movie digs into what it means to reclaim your sense of self after you've been turned into someone else's weapon. Can you redefine who you are? Or are you forever chained to the version of you that others created? It's a powerful, sometimes heartbreaking theme that plays out in quiet, character-driven moments, the kind that stick with you long after the action has faded. And let's not forget sacrifice and cost. The movie makes sure you feel the weight of the missions these characters take on. There's no guarantee they'll make it back, no shiny medal ceremony waiting at the end. The stakes feel personal, the risks feel sharp, and when someone makes a sacrifice, it lands hard because the film has spent time making you care about what they're leaving behind. But here's the kicker: Thunderbolts 2025 doesn't spoon-feed you its messages. It shows them, it lets the characters live them, it invites you to sit in the moral murkiness without drawing a neat line under everything. You'll walk away chewing on questions like, can broken people truly fix anything? Does loyalty matter if the cause is flawed? How much of who you are is choice, and how much is just survival? So, friends, if you're ready for a movie that's not just punching and quipping but also packed with chewy, thought-provoking themes, Thunderbolts delivers. It's a story about imperfect people, impossible choices, and the brutal, beautiful mess of trying to do something good in a world that doesn't make it easy. Which theme do you think will hit you the hardest when the credits roll? Visual effects and CGI, Thunderbolts 2025. Alright friends, buckle up because now we're diving headfirst into the eye candy of Thunderbolts 2025. The visual effects, CGI, and all the glorious, or sometimes chaotic, spectacle that makes your jaw drop in the theater. First off, let's get this straight. This movie knows it's playing in a world where wild superpowers, experimental tech, and government black ops collide. That means the visual effects don't just sit quietly in the background. They're right up front, screaming, "Look at me!" But here's the good news. They work. The CGI here is surprisingly grounded. Not in the sense that it's subtle, but in the sense that it feels integrated into the world. Ghosts phasing? Smooth as glass. The digital shimmer when she glitches between solid and intangible isn't just flashy for no reason. It tells you something about her instability, both physically and emotionally. Taskmaster's moves? Those mimic-based fighting styles could easily look like a clunky video game cutscene, but thanks to a slick mix of motion capture and digital polish, they come across as sharp, almost predatory. Like watching a human mirror flicker through dozens of fighting styles at once. And Bucky's arm. Let me tell you, that Wakandan upgrade still packs a visual punch. The CGI used to animate its flexibility and raw power is clean, weighty, and never cartoonish. You believe it's metal, you believe it hits like a freight train, and when the sparks fly in combat, you feel the crunch. Now, where the film really flexes its visual muscle is during the big set pieces. Explosions, aerial shots, collapsing structures, and those slick slow motion moments where debris flies across the screen. This is where CGI and practical effects shake hands. You've got physical sets blowing up, stunt work enhanced by digital layers, and entire environments that shift between real and virtual without missing a beat. For example, a firefight in a crumbling facility might use real pyrotechnics on set, but extend the destruction digitally to make you feel like the whole place is about to collapse on your head. The blending is so smooth, you almost don't notice where the practical ends and the digital begins. But, and here's where it gets fun, the movie doesn't overdo the digital spectacle. Unlike some Marvel films that go full neon laser light show in the third act, Thunderbolts keeps its effects gritty, textured, and sometimes even claustrophobic. You get close-up action where you can see the sweat, the dirt, the frayed edges of a world that's falling apart. That makes the big CGI-enhanced moments hit harder because they're not just noise. They're spikes of intensity in a world that otherwise feels rough and real. Now, let's talk about creature design and enhanced humans. Some of the Thunderbolts' opponents are not just guys in tactical gear. They're augmented, mutated, or otherwise enhanced. The CGI here has to walk a fine line. Too glossy, and you break immersion. Too gritty, and it looks like a bad horror flick. Thunderbolt strikes that balance with unsettling detail, giving you villains and monsters that feel both fantastical and disturbingly possible. Veins pulsing with experimental serum, eyes flickering with unnatural light, skin rippling where enhancements have fused with flesh. It's the kind of visual work that makes you lean in and shudder at the same time. But maybe the smartest trick. The movie knows when to hold back. Not every moment needs a CGI flourish. Sometimes the tension comes from a dark corridor, a flickering light, a shadow moving where it shouldn't. The restraint gives the big digital moments more punch because you're not desensitized by constant spectacle. So friends, if you're the kind of viewer who loves dissecting how a movie's visuals elevate the story, how every shimmer, explosion, glitch, and digital creature is crafted not just to look cool but to mean something, Thunderbolts delivers. It's a film where practical and digital effects dance together, where the CGI doesn't just decorate the action but drives the emotional weight and tension of the story. What visual moment do you think will stick in your mind the longest? The raw, practical crunch of a fight, or the digital, almost unreal beauty of a world on the edge? Set design and locations. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, let's step into the world of Thunderbolts, 2025, where the locations and set design aren't just pretty backdrops. They're essential to the story, dripping with meaning, texture, and atmosphere. You don't just watch these characters move through their world. You feel it. Every abandoned warehouse, decaying facility, and high-tech hideout is like a piece of the puzzle, hinting at something darker, more complex, and often more dangerous. First up, the urban decay. Picture this: rusted, cracked, forgotten buildings that are half buried under years of neglect. This isn't your polished, shiny Marvel universe where everything is immaculate. No, Thunderbolts drops you into a grimy, lived-in world. There are spots where you can practically taste the dust in the air. Old factories turned into hideouts, empty streets where the only sound is the creak of metal or the echo of distant footsteps. The locations feel like characters in their own right. You get the sense that the world is just as broken as the characters, and there's no escaping the crumbling, decaying remnants of their pasts. Let's talk about interiors, because when you see the Thunderbolts hideout, you know this place isn't about comfort or luxury. It's about surviving, hiding, and planning. The set design here is perfect for the tone. Cracked concrete walls, flickering fluorescent lights, battered furniture, and scattered weapons. There's no aesthetic elegance in sight. You can feel the tension in the air, the fact that this group of misfits is never truly at ease. The props, old radios buzzing static, tech gear littered across dusty tables, weapons tucked in unexpected corners. They don't just tell you about the team's readiness for battle. They show you their fractured state of mind. But not all of the film is set in dingy corners of forgotten cities. Oh no, Thunderbolts takes us to high-tech, sleek environments too, and here's where it gets fun. The contrast between these polished, pristine locations and the gritty, run-down hideouts is stark and purposeful. When the team infiltrates a super-secret government facility or a state-of-the-art research lab, the design is clean, cold, almost sterile. Everything is too perfect, too shiny. The controlled, clinical vibe of these locations contrasts beautifully with the chaotic personalities of the Thunderbolts. There's an eerie emptiness to these spaces, giving you the sense that they were never meant for people like them. It's a clash of worlds that deepens the story's exploration of trust, control, and the cost of doing what you think is right. Now, let's get into the action-friendly environments, because we all know Thunderbolts doesn't shy away from a good fight scene. These locations are built for chaos. Tight hallways, abandoned docks with huge shipping crates ready to be used for cover, industrial spaces with heavy machinery that gets caught in the crossfire. It all contributes to the action in a way that makes it feel raw and dangerous. These aren't pristine battlefields. They're gritty, messy spaces that swallow the characters whole. When a fight breaks out, you feel the confined, claustrophobic space. The setting doesn't just contain the action, it amplifies it. And then there are the outdoor locations, where the world opens up a bit. Picture the rugged, overgrown landscape where the Thunderbolts take their fight to the elements. The backdrop of natural chaos mirrors their internal struggles, untamed, unpredictable, and hard to control. The settings might look peaceful on the surface, but you know the storm is coming. The wildness of nature here becomes a stark contrast to the controlled environments of their corporate or government enemies, further emphasizing the tension between the team's chaotic energy and the cool, calculated forces they're up against. One thing that's especially impressive about the set design? The hidden details. There's a richness to the world building in this movie that's easy to overlook at first. Maybe it's the old, faded propaganda posters on a wall, hinting at the government's failed promises. Or the haphazard collection of personal items left behind in the Thunderbolts hideout, each with its own story. These little props don't just decorate the set. They give you a deeper sense of who these characters are and where they've been. But here's the real kicker. The locations themselves tell part of the story. The decaying ruins show you that the Thunderbolts are fighting not just against external enemies, but against the wreckage of their own lives and choices. The sleek, modern labs remind you that the world is still trying to mold them into something they're not. Every setting pushes the narrative, enhancing the emotional beats, deepening the themes, and elevating the stakes. So, when you're watching Thunderbolts, pay close attention to the settings. Every cracked wall, flickering light, and sterile laboratory is more than just a backdrop. It's a reflection of the internal worlds of these characters. This is a universe that feels lived in, broken, and at times, hostile, and it's all the more gripping because of it. Which location do you think will stick with you the longest? The decaying hideouts, or the cold, pristine government labs? Dialogue and script. Thunderbolts, 2025. Now let's dive into one of the most important ingredients in any blockbuster movie: the dialogue. We all know that a superhero movie doesn't just thrive on punches and CGI. The words spoken by characters can make or break the vibe of the whole story. With Thunderbolts, 2025, the script and dialogue are like the perfect seasoning. They enhance the action, ground the characters, and give you those delicious moments you'll quote with your friends long after the credits roll. First of all, the dialogue is sharp. These characters are broken misfits, each with their own baggage and wounds. They're not your standard, heroic speech types. Instead, they talk like real people who've seen some things, who've had their trust shattered and their hearts bruised. And that's where the script excels. It knows exactly when to hit you with raw emotional weight and when to throw in that sharp, biting humor that cuts through the darkness. It's a perfect balance that keeps you hooked, whether you're laughing at a dry, sarcastic one-liner or holding your breath during a gut-wrenching confession. Take Bucky Barnes, for example. He's the tortured soul, the man who's been through hell and back. His dialogue feels like a mixture of regret, humor, and bitter wisdom. He's the kind of guy who'll crack a joke in the middle of a high-stakes moment, but you can sense the pain behind the words. One line might have you chuckling at his cynical wit, but just as quickly, another will punch you in the gut as you realize how deeply he's been affected by his past. It's this emotional undercurrent that makes his dialogue so memorable. Then there's Yelena. You've probably already noticed that she's got a quick tongue, right? Well, Thunderbolts doesn't hold back on giving her some of the best moments of banter. Her sharp wit isn't just for laughs, though. It's a defense mechanism. Her sarcastic quips and deadpan delivery are ways of protecting herself from the deeper emotional truths she's not ready to confront. And trust me, there's more than one moment when her quick-fire remarks will have you laughing out loud. But then, in the blink of an eye, she'll deliver a line that cuts straight to the heart, and you'll realize that this character isn't just the comic relief. She's a woman who's trying to heal from unimaginable pain. Let's not forget Taskmaster and Ghost. These characters have lived lives where trust is a luxury, and the idea of feeling understood is almost laughable. Taskmaster's dialogue is cold, almost robotic, precise, tactical, and at times, downright chilling. It's the kind of dialogue that's stripped of emotion, but you can feel the weight of each word. Ghost, on the other hand, speaks with a certain vulnerability despite her internal chaos. Her lines often reveal that even someone who is constantly flickering in and out of existence is still desperate to make a real connection. A beautifully tragic undertone in every word. And of course, the villains. Oh, the villains. They don't just sneer their lines. Oh no, they relish them. There's a palpable delight in their dialogue that makes you feel both repelled and oddly fascinated. They say the kind of things that make you realize they're not just evil for the sake of it. They genuinely believe in their twisted worldview. It's the kind of dialogue that feels just off enough that you can't quite dismiss it as typical villainous ramblings. They're sharp, philosophical, and downright chilling at times. Now, there's also a lot of thematic weight woven into the dialogue. Whether it's about redemption, trust, or the cost of power, the script never shies away from pushing these themes into the characters' conversations. It's not just about action. It's about what drives these characters, what they're fighting for, and what they've lost. These conversations are grounded in the complexities of their pasts, and they make you understand, really understand, why these broken characters are willing to do the unthinkable. But don't think the entire movie is all doom and gloom. The script knows when to lighten the mood. The quick wit and snappy comebacks provide just enough levity to break the tension. Those funny, awkward moments of banter between characters make you feel like, despite all their differences and baggage, there's still a bond, a family of sorts, forming. And that bond becomes stronger through their exchanges, whether it's a snarky remark about someone's taste in music or a heated argument over the best way to execute a mission. So, let's talk standout lines. Without giving too much away, there's a line from Bucky about the idea of redemption that'll stick with you long after you leave the theater. It's one of those lines that feels like a punch to the gut because you realize how much it's rooted in his personal journey. And then, Yelena has a moment where she casually drops a sarcastic comment that turns into a gut-wrenching truth about her own past. It's a perfect example of how humor in the film serves a much deeper purpose. Ultimately, the dialogue in Thunderbolts doesn't just tell you what's happening on screen. It gives you a window into these characters' souls, letting you see their insecurities, their desires, and their unspoken fears. And when the script nails it, it hits hard. Whether it's a biting joke or a moment of deep emotional reflection, the words linger. So, which line do you think will stick with you? Will it be the one that made you laugh? Or the one that made you think about the cost of being a hero? Genre execution. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, so let's talk about how Thunderbolts, 2025, handles the superhero genre. We all know the drill. Big battles, flashy powers, a dash of humor, and a villain you just can't wait to see get a beatdown. But this film, it takes the superhero formula and flips it on its head, giving it a fresh coat of paint while still playing with the core elements we know and love. So does it follow the genre conventions, or does it shake things up? Let's break it down. First off, Thunderbolts definitely subverts a lot of the usual superhero tropes. If you're expecting another movie where the heroes are perfectly clean-cut, moral paragons, you're in for a surprise. These characters are messy. They're outlaws. They don't play by the rules, and that alone sets the movie apart. Instead of following the typical hero's journey, where everyone's fighting for justice with pure hearts, this team is made up of former villains, outcasts, and broken individuals. So, already, you're stepping into a world where the good guys are a little more complicated, the motivations are a bit murkier, and the moral lines are never quite as clear-cut. But don't get too comfortable. Even with these refreshing tweaks, Thunderbolts knows how to lean into genre conventions when it counts. The action scenes? Oh, they're there, and they're wild. Explosions, high-octane chase sequences, and epic showdowns. All the superhero action you could ask for. But the difference here is how the film connects those action sequences to the characters. The fights aren't just about spectacle. They're about the emotional stakes. Every punch, every explosion, feels like it's tied to something deeper within the characters. It's not just hero fights villain. It's broken people fighting to survive. And that shift in perspective makes the action feel more grounded and emotional. What about suspense? Thunderbolts plays that card brilliantly. While it's got the explosive action, the movie doesn't always rely on it to carry the tension. Instead, it builds suspense through atmosphere. Some of the most gripping scenes don't come from the big, loud battles, but from quiet, tense moments where the team is plotting or debating. You can feel the pressure mounting as each character's personal demons threaten to derail the mission. It's the kind of suspense where you're not just on edge because of what's happening on screen, but because of what might happen next emotionally for the characters. The thrill isn't always in the action, but in the uncertainty of how these broken people will respond to the pressure. Now, let's talk about humor. Yes, it's there. And thankfully, it's not forced. The film doesn't dive into slapstick or cheesy one-liners. Instead, the humor is sharp, dark, and perfectly timed. Yelena gets most of the witty moments, throwing out sarcasm that's both a defense mechanism and a way of coping with the chaos around her. But even in her humor, there's a thread of vulnerability, reminding us that these characters might joke around, but they're hurting. So when the humor lands, it feels natural, layered, and human. It doesn't just provide comic relief, it deepens the characters. And then there's drama. Oh boy, Thunderbolts doesn't shy away from the heavy stuff. This movie dives deep into the emotional struggles of its team. The weight of their past mistakes, their desperate search for redemption, and their broken relationships make for some incredibly intense moments. It's not just about saving the world, it's about whether they can save themselves in the process. The drama in the movie often takes a quiet, simmering approach. It's not the kind of melodrama that feels over the top. It's grounded and personal. Each character's internal conflict plays out in subtle but powerful ways, adding emotional depth to every action sequence. And here's the kicker. Thunderbolts doesn't just rely on the same old cliches we've seen in the genre. Sure, there are some familiar tropes. A team of misfits coming together, fighting against a common enemy, the redemption arcs. But the film twists those conventions. Instead of the usual villains-turned-heroes narrative, we get a group of people who are still working through their pasts, still figuring out if they can be heroes, and whether they even want to be. They're not fighting to save the world for some grand, noble reason. They're fighting because they have to. They're still figuring out their place in the world. And the villain? Oh, they're not your typical one-dimensional baddie either. Instead of being evil for the sake of it, the antagonist has layers, motivations, and a twisted sense of logic that makes them both terrifying and disturbingly relatable. This film avoids the cookie-cutter bad guy in favor of a more complex antagonist whose goals and actions push the team to confront their own darker impulses. In terms of balance, Thunderbolts does an incredible job mixing the elements. The action is relentless, but it never overtakes the character development. The humor adds a human touch without undercutting the serious moments. The suspense keeps you on the edge of your seat, while the drama ensures you care about these characters when the punches aren't being thrown. It's a superhero movie, sure, but it's a different kind of superhero movie. It's a movie where the genre's conventions are both honored and subverted, creating a fresh, engaging experience. So whether you're here for the fights, the laughs, the suspense, or the emotional stakes, Thunderbolts finds a way to balance it all, offering a genre experience that feels both familiar and excitingly new. What aspect of the genre are you most excited about? The action, the characters, or the twists on the usual superhero formula? Social and cultural commentary. Thunderbolts, 2025. Okay, let's dive into how Thunderbolts, 2025, tackles some deeper, more contemporary issues. You know, those things that linger just beneath the surface of any great action flick but are often left unspoken? Well, this film isn't afraid to speak up and drop some serious social and cultural commentary. And it does it in a way that feels natural, not preachy. First of all, the movie deals with the idea of identity and the cost of redemption. The characters in Thunderbolts aren't your typical goody-two-shoes heroes. Many of them come from dark, complicated pasts. They've made mistakes, some catastrophic, and now they're trying to find a way to live with themselves. This theme hits hard in today's world, where the idea of second chances and the value of personal growth are constantly debated. The film asks, can you truly change, or are you forever defined by your past? In a society where people are often quick to cancel or label others, Thunderbolts takes a look at the complexity of redemption and asks whether anyone, hero or villain, can really escape their history. And this idea of being defined by your past, that's something the film explores through some real-world lenses. With characters like Yelena, who's dealing with the trauma of a broken system, and Bucky, who's haunted by the things he did as the Winter Soldier, you get a strong sense of how trauma affects not just personal identity, but also the way society views you. It's about the consequences of actions, but also about the collective responsibility we all share in allowing people to change. It feels incredibly relevant today, where accountability and forgiveness are such hot topics in our culture. The movie subtly comments on how society's willingness to forgive is just as important as an individual's efforts to change. Now let's talk about power dynamics. The Thunderbolts team is made up of former villains, each with their own powers, motivations, and a history of being used by larger powers for their own agendas. Think about how relevant that is in a world where power structures often exploit the vulnerable or force people into situations where they have no control. There's a subtle but powerful undercurrent throughout the film about how these characters were manipulated, used as pawns, and how they're trying to reclaim their agency. It's not a hammering message. It's woven into the fabric of who these characters are and how they act. But it asks us to think about how society's systems often operate in the shadows, using people as tools, and what happens when those tools turn against the system that created them. And let's not forget about diversity and inclusion. The characters are not just a bunch of white, cisgender, straight guys fighting for justice. We've got a diverse team here, a range of backgrounds, personalities, and personal struggles. The film makes it clear that these characters, while flawed, all have something unique to offer. They challenge the conventional hero mold and break down what it means to be part of a team in a world that often feels divided. Each of them is fighting their own battles not just against the big bad guy, but also against their own sense of belonging and value in the world. And while this theme isn't hammered home with a megaphone, it's felt in the dynamics between them. It's a much-needed reflection on how different voices and perspectives need to come together, especially when facing a common enemy. What about politics? There's a touch of it too, especially when you consider the military-industrial complex and corporate manipulation that looms in the background. The film's antagonist, while not a straightforward politician or corrupt CEO, represents the shadowy powers that benefit from war, division, and exploitation. The villains in Thunderbolts aren't just trying to take over the world. They're capitalizing on the chaos that exists in society, using the fear and conflict they create to widen the gap between the powerful and the powerless. There's an underlying message here about the dangers of unchecked power, and how those at the top of society are often the ones most capable of controlling narratives and shaping public opinion. Then we have the film's more personal moments, where characters struggle with their own internalized prejudices and biases. These aren't just mindless villains or perfect heroes, after all. The team members question what they believe about themselves and each other, often confronting uncomfortable truths. Take Bucky, who's constantly dealing with the weight of being viewed as a monster for the things he did under Hydra's control. His struggle with identity is a powerful commentary on how society treats those who've been labeled as bad. It's a reminder that healing isn't just an internal process. It's about how others see you and whether they'll allow you to be more than your worst mistake. Finally, let's talk about the idea of team dynamics and belonging. The team isn't just thrown together for some heroic mission. They're a bunch of misfits and outcasts who find each other through shared pain. Their struggles with finding their place in the world speak to the alienation many feel today, whether because of their identity, their history, or their social standing. There's a lot of relatability in how these characters navigate the world, especially when they feel like they don't fit in. The movie asks us to think about how people who feel left out or marginalized might still have something incredible to contribute if given the opportunity. In the end, Thunderbolts isn't just a superhero flick. It's a subtle yet poignant commentary on a world that's messy, unfair, and often broken. The movie raises questions about redemption, identity, power, and the fight for self-worth without ever feeling like it's forcing a moral lesson down your throat. And that's the beauty of it. It's layered, thought-provoking, and perfectly tuned to the cultural landscape we're navigating today. Whether it's the personal struggles of the team or the grander political and social issues it touches on, this film offers an insightful reflection on the complexities of our own world. Audience engagement. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, let's talk about Thunderbolts and how it grips you emotionally. You know, those films that just reach into your chest and squeeze, leaving you thinking about them long after the credits roll? This one does exactly that, but not in the usual, let's make you cry kind of way. Oh no! It engages you on a deeper level, throwing you into the emotional complexities of the characters and making you feel like you're right there with them, battling through their pain, their joy, and their failures. Let's start with the laughter. Believe it or not, Thunderbolts has moments of levity that will have you cracking up. But it's not just random jokes thrown in for the sake of a laugh. The humor here is character-driven. Yelena's sarcastic remarks and sharp wit become a defense mechanism against the chaos around her. And there's something incredibly relatable about that. Her humor isn't just funny, it's raw. And her interactions with the team add this brilliant touch of lightness amid all the tension. These moments don't just serve to give you a break from the heavy stuff. They reveal pieces of the characters' personalities and make them feel more real, like they could walk off the screen and into your life. And let's be real, who doesn't love a good sarcastic hero? But here's the kicker. This movie doesn't just keep the laughs coming. There's a point where the film hits you right in the gut, and you're not prepared for it. Whether it's a moment of betrayal, a character confronting their darkest fear, or a quiet but intensely emotional conversation between two team members, the film knows how to slow down and make you feel the weight of these characters' struggles. It's not about pulling at your heartstrings in the most obvious way. It's about making you care about these complex, broken people. You'll find yourself feeling for them when they experience the pain of their own decisions. The emotional depth here is so well crafted that you can't help but get invested in their journeys. You'll find yourself holding your breath during pivotal moments, heart racing, hoping they can overcome whatever they're facing. Tears? Oh yeah. The film knows exactly when to pull that emotional punch. It's not over the top though. No, Thunderbolts isn't about manipulating you into a tearful breakdown. It's more subtle. There are moments that hit so hard because they feel earned. When a character opens up about their darkest secret or a team member faces the consequences of their past, it's gut-wrenching. Not just because of what happens, but because you've been along for the ride with them. The vulnerability in those scenes feels so authentic that you can't help but be moved by it. It's the kind of emotion that sneaks up on you. You don't see it coming, and suddenly, you're in your feels, trying to wipe away that tear before the next action scene kicks in. But this film isn't just about tearing you apart emotionally. No way. It knows when to give you that rush of excitement. And it does so with a kind of intensity that makes your pulse race. Think action-packed sequences where the stakes are sky high, and you're on the edge of your seat, cheering for the team to pull through. Whether it's a battle against overwhelming odds or a mind-bending plot twist, Thunderbolts knows how to build tension and then release it in the most satisfying way. The adrenaline hits hard, and for a brief moment, you feel like you're in the thick of it with the characters, fully invested in every move, every shot, every explosion. But let's not forget about the shock factor. Thunderbolts is full of those moments that leave you going, wait, did that just happen? The kind of jaw-dropping moments that you can't help but talk about with friends after the movie ends. Whether it's an unexpected betrayal, a sudden twist in the plot, or a character making an incredibly difficult choice, the film throws you curveballs that keep you guessing. These shocks aren't just for shock's sake, either. They deepen the emotional stakes and force the characters, and you, the audience, to question everything you thought you knew about the story and these characters. What's really impressive is how rewatchable the film is. You're going to want to dive back into Thunderbolts again and again, because there are layers here that you'll miss on the first watch. Those subtle hints in the dialogue, the facial expressions, the small details in the background, they all build towards a richer understanding of the story. And with each rewatch, you'll uncover something new, a new piece of the puzzle, a character moment that hits differently the second time around. It's a film that invites deeper reflection, encouraging you to think more about the characters and their journeys long after you leave the theater. And let's talk about the discussion factor. This is one of those films that you can't just watch and move on from. No. The themes, the character arcs, and the unexpected twists will spark intense debates. You'll find yourself arguing with friends about who was right or wrong, who should have done what, and what the deeper meaning behind certain scenes really was. There's a lot of room for interpretation, and that's the beauty of it. Thunderbolts opens up avenues for you to discuss, whether it's about the complexities of redemption, the ethics of their actions, or how the film mirrors current social issues. It's the kind of film that keeps conversations alive long after the credits roll. So, whether it's the humor that catches you off guard, the emotional moments that hit harder than you expected, the rush of excitement that keeps you glued to the screen, or the shocking twists that leave you speechless, Thunderbolts is a film that knows how to make you feel. And it doesn't just stop when the movie ends. It lingers. You'll find yourself thinking about these characters, their struggles, and their triumphs, long after you've left the theater. That's the mark of a movie that truly engages its audience. Comparisons to similar films. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, let's talk about how Thunderbolts stacks up against other films in its genre, the Marvel Universe, and even the director's other works. You'd think a superhero movie with a ragtag group of outcasts would feel a little familiar, right? After all, we've had Guardians of the Galaxy, Suicide Squad, and even the Avengers laying down that misfits save the day formula. But here's the thing. Thunderbolts isn't just another group of heroes fighting for justice. It's so much more layered, and it brings a fresh, gritty energy to the genre that we haven't seen in the same way before. First off, compared to other superhero films, Thunderbolts doesn't just rely on flashy spectacle. Sure, there's action, and it's big action. Think explosions, high stakes, and battles that make you feel like the fate of the world hangs by a thread. But what really sets Thunderbolts apart is that emotional core. While other films might prioritize their action scenes, here the characters are just as important as the blows they throw. The humor, the pain, the flaws of the characters drive the story forward, and the stakes aren't just about saving the world. They're about saving themselves, finding redemption, and confronting their own demons. It's much less about punching the bad guys and much more about confronting personal moral dilemmas. Where other films focus on grandiose, world-ending threats, Thunderbolts zooms in on the characters' internal battles, making it feel more intimate and complex. Now, in the Marvel franchise specifically, Thunderbolts carves its own niche. Sure, we've seen teams before, but this isn't your typical heroes team-up scenario. These aren't shiny, goody-two-shoes heroes working in perfect harmony. Instead, Thunderbolts is about a fractured team of antiheroes, each one struggling with their past decisions and actions. The heroes we've gotten before, your Iron Man, Captain America, even Spider-Man, have been largely heroic characters with relatively clean slates, except for a few rough patches. Thunderbolts flips the script by giving us characters who are deeply flawed, haunted by their own pasts. It's this gritty underdog vibe that makes it feel distinct in the MCU. They're not here to take down a big evil corporation, well, there's that too, but they're here to confront their own demons, which is way more raw and relatable in today's world. In terms of director's filmography, if you're familiar with the director's previous work, you can see some similar themes emerging, particularly around redemption and self-discovery. If they've directed films where characters are forced to grapple with who they've been versus who they're trying to be, then Thunderbolts continues that exploration. However, what's interesting here is that the director isn't just exploring this through one or two characters. It's done across the entire ensemble. Every character is grappling with something personal and existential, which gives the movie a more collective, universal feel. The director leans into the rawness of human flaws and doesn't shy away from showing us the cost of these characters' journeys. Much like some of their other works, but this time, it's even more pronounced due to the group dynamics and the morally ambiguous team at the center. And speaking of group dynamics, we can't ignore how Thunderbolts takes inspiration from other team-up films but adds a unique twist to the formula. Think of the Suicide Squad, for example, where a group of misfits are forced into a high-stakes mission. Thunderbolts has that same energy, but there's more emotional depth here. Yes, there are comedic moments, and sure, they have their clumsy moments, but it's not all about absurdity. Unlike Suicide Squad, which veers into pure chaos, Thunderbolts has a purpose beyond just being a fun, chaotic ride. It's about growth and healing, even in the midst of all the action and madness. Each character's arc is about reclaiming something lost, whether it's self-worth, trust, or redemption, and that gives the film a resonance that Suicide Squad might not quite have reached. Now, let's talk about genre execution in general. Superhero films are notorious for following a tried-and-true formula. Introduce the hero, throw them into a big, destructive battle, then save the day. Thunderbolts, however, subverts this to a degree. Sure, there are the necessary action sequences and the world at stake, but the human element of the film takes center stage. The characters aren't just dealing with external threats, they're dealing with internal struggles, who they are versus who they want to be. So, it's not so much the world-saving plot that drives the film, but the psychological journeys of these characters, and that's what separates it from your average superhero flick. If we're comparing it to something like Guardians of the Galaxy, another team-up film, the vibe is somewhat similar in terms of an unlikely family coming together. But Guardians is full of bright colors, quirky humor, and a certain irreverence that makes it feel more lighthearted. Thunderbolts, on the other hand, is grittier, darker, and more emotionally charged. It's got that chaotic, out-of-control energy, but there's also this quiet, introspective sadness in it that doesn't quite exist in the same way in other ensemble superhero films. Ultimately, Thunderbolts offers something new in an overcrowded superhero genre by embracing emotional complexity, deep character arcs, and a narrative that focuses just as much on internal battles as it does on external conflict. It doesn't shy away from the messiness of being human. While we've seen similar group dynamics before, the film feels fresh because it doesn't just rely on what's come before. Instead, it pushes boundaries, making the genre feel more raw and authentic than many of its predecessors. And in terms of how it stands against others in the director's filmography, it's another solid step forward in their ability to take complex characters and bring them into a world where the stakes aren't just about saving the world, they're about saving themselves. Symbolism and metaphors. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, let's dive into the layers that Thunderbolts hides beneath its action-packed surface. This film isn't just about explosions and flashy special effects. It's about the bigger picture. It's about how the characters' inner battles are reflected in the world they're fighting to change. It's the kind of film that gives you a lot to unpack once you look beyond the surface. So, let's get into the cool, subtle stuff. The symbolism and metaphors that elevate the story to a whole new level. One of the most striking visual motifs in the film is the recurring imagery of fractured glass. Now, this isn't just a random aesthetic choice. It's a powerful metaphor for the characters themselves. Each member of the Thunderbolts is, in some way, broken or fragmented. Whether it's emotional scars from past failures or literal physical damage, these characters have pieces of themselves that are shattered. And throughout the film, the idea of piecing those fragments back together mirrors their own personal journeys toward redemption. You see cracked mirrors, glass barriers, and shattered windows at key emotional moments, emphasizing that the team is trying to rebuild and repair not just the world, but themselves. The brokenness of the glass represents the fractured nature of their personalities and relationships. And it's the visual cue that keeps popping up every time their pasts or inner demons come to the forefront. Another recurring motif is the shadowy silhouettes that hover over characters in critical moments. These aren't just shadows cast by the environment. They're symbolic of the past. The silhouettes represent the ghosts of these characters' former lives, decisions they regret, people they've hurt, mistakes they can't undo. These shadows loom large when a character has to confront their darkest fears or when they're forced to confront the consequences of their actions. The darkness isn't just physical. It's the weight of history and guilt that each character carries with them. It's almost as if the characters can never escape their past, no matter how much they try. But the cool part? These shadows fade as the characters start making decisions that reflect growth, redemption, or healing. It's like watching their past slowly lose its hold over them as they move forward in the present. Now, let's talk about color and how it plays into the overall storytelling. The color palette here is intentionally muted and dark, filled with deep blues, grays, and blacks, which really sets the tone for the gritty world these characters inhabit. But what's fascinating is that, as the characters evolve, whether it's their relationships growing stronger or their personal growth coming to fruition, the color saturation subtly increases. The more they heal, the more the colors of their world become brighter. It's not an overwhelming change, but it's noticeable enough to make you realize that the characters' journeys are as much about finding clarity in their world as they are about finding clarity within themselves. It's like the film uses color as a visual representation of hope. Very subtle, but effective. And then, of course, there's the use of the storm. The storm is everywhere in Thunderbolts, both literally and metaphorically. There are moments of literal weather storms, where the team is caught in intense, almost apocalyptic weather conditions, but it's much more than just a cool visual. The storm represents the chaos and turmoil these characters are enduring, both externally and internally. They are caught in the storm of their own actions, fighting through it, trying to get to the other side. In one of the film's pivotal moments, the storm begins to clear as the team makes a breakthrough, symbolizing that even in the most intense emotional turmoil, there's hope that the storm will pass, that there's a chance to start over, to make it through the darkness and into the light. The storm doesn't just reflect the literal battles, it mirrors the emotional landscapes of the characters. Turbulent, unpredictable, but ultimately temporary. But perhaps one of the most fascinating metaphors in the film is the mask. It's not just a literal mask that some characters wear, though that's part of it. It's also a symbol of the emotional armor that the characters put on to protect themselves from the world. The mask represents the walls they've built around themselves to hide their pain, guilt, and vulnerability. And throughout the film, there are moments when characters either remove their mask, both literally and figuratively, or embrace their true selves in front of others. These moments are incredibly poignant. They represent moments of vulnerability, of letting go of control, and it's here that the characters' most real and honest sides are revealed. When the masks come off, it's like you're seeing the characters for the first time. Not as the heroes they present to the world, but as the broken, flawed, and beautiful people they truly are. And let's not forget about the use of mirrors. This one's subtle but important. Mirrors are used at key moments to reflect not just the physical appearance of characters, but their internal states. Characters see themselves in mirrors at moments when they're forced to confront who they've become versus who they want to be. The mirror acts as a kind of self-reflection, showing the characters both literally and figuratively the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. It's a visual metaphor for self-realization and acceptance, because as much as these characters fight against the external forces in the film, it's their internal battles with their own identities that form the core of the story. These visual metaphors and symbols aren't just random flourishes. They're there to deepen the film's narrative and give the audience a chance to look beyond the action and explore the emotional heart of the story. The fractured glass, the looming shadows, the color changes, the storm, the mask, and the mirrors. They all serve as visual cues that tell us the story isn't just about saving the day. It's about saving themselves, finding redemption, and ultimately coming to terms with their own identities and choices. Each symbol is like a piece of the puzzle, hinting at the film's deeper themes of growth, healing, and the possibility of transformation. It's one of those films where the more you dig, the more you realize just how thoughtfully everything is connected. And that's what makes Thunderbolts so much more than just another superhero movie. It's an emotionally layered journey, both for its characters and its audience. Franchise or historical context. Thunderbolts, 2025. Let's talk about how Thunderbolts fits into the broader context of the MCU, because it's not just a standalone film. Oh no, this one plays a big role in setting the stage for what's next in the superhero universe. It's kind of like the new kid who walks into a room full of established characters and says, "Hey, I'm here to shake things up." So, where does it fit into the grand MCU puzzle? And how does it contribute to the overarching narrative? Let's break it down. For starters, Thunderbolts isn't just a random spin-off of the MCU. It's a deliberate and important shift in the storytelling direction. Up until now, the MCU has given us plenty of larger-than-life heroes like Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. But with Thunderbolts, we're stepping into a whole new realm of antiheroes. Characters who aren't your typical caped crusaders fighting for justice. They've made mistakes, they've been on the wrong side of things, and now they're trying to make it right. This moral ambiguity sets the tone for what's next in the MCU, adding layers of complexity that we haven't really explored in depth before. Now, you can't talk about Thunderbolts without considering its connection to the aftermath of the Infinity Saga. The MCU has been riding high on the consequences of the Endgame events, and the ripples of that movie are still felt in Thunderbolts. The characters here are part of a world that's rebuilding, trying to recover from the devastation caused by Thanos and the entire Infinity War saga. You know how the Avengers were the big, shiny team of heroes? Well, Thunderbolts is more like the ragtag bunch who were forgotten or cast aside in the wake of all that destruction. They don't have the luxury of clean-cut heroism. They're dealing with real-world fallout, the emotional baggage, the fractured sense of justice, and the lingering question of what it means to be a hero in a world that's been shattered. This film's contribution to the overarching narrative is huge. It's not just about setting up a new group of characters. It's about redefining what it means to be part of a superhero team in the MCU. This is the MCU's first real dive into the world of moral gray areas, where there's no clear-cut good versus evil. Instead, the lines blur. And that's not just about being edgy for the sake of it. It's a response to the changing landscape of the MCU, where things aren't so straightforward anymore. We've seen the rise of villains who, through their complexity, became sympathetic, like Loki or Killmonger. Thunderbolts takes that same idea and flips it. These are characters who might have once been seen as the bad guys, but now they're getting a chance to play in a new narrative where they can redeem themselves and maybe, just maybe, become the kind of heroes they never thought they could be. What's also super fun about this is that it's not just an isolated story. It ties into the larger MCU Phase 5 arc. As we watch these antiheroes try to figure out who they are, we're also being introduced to the new phase of the MCU that's focused on rebuilding, rethinking what heroes should be, and exploring all sorts of new and exciting concepts. It's almost like Thunderbolts is the bridge between the old, clean-cut superhero narratives we've seen in earlier films and the more nuanced, morally complex storytelling we're about to dive into with new projects in Phase 5 and beyond. So in a way, Thunderbolts serves as a catalyst, a starting point for something bigger and darker in the MCU. Beyond that, let's talk about the characters themselves. Many of these characters have deep ties to previous films in the MCU, and that's where Thunderbolts really becomes a joy for fans who've been following the saga since the beginning. The film doesn't just introduce a group of new faces, it also brings together characters who have been around for a while, sometimes in the background or as secondary characters. For example, Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, and John Walker, aka US Agent, all have their own personal histories within the MCU, and now they're brought together, forming a team that's less about saving the world and more about confronting personal demons. These characters were introduced in films like Black Widow, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and now we get to see them come together to create something new. The beauty of this is that we're not just getting more of the same. Thunderbolts takes these familiar faces and adds depth to them, giving them a chance to grow in new, exciting ways. In terms of how it contributes to the future MCU narrative, Thunderbolts is setting the stage for new conflicts and stories to explore. The focus on antiheroes and moral complexity is just the tip of the iceberg. As we move further into the next phase of the MCU, we're likely going to see more teams like this. Groups that don't fit the perfect hero mold, but who still have a role to play in the larger universe. Thunderbolts is the first step into that darker, more uncertain territory, and that's exactly what makes it feel so different from what we've seen before. If you're someone who's been keeping up with the MCU's long game, Thunderbolts feels like a fresh take that's necessary for the evolution of the universe. It's not about rehashing the same old storylines. It's about pushing the boundaries of what superhero stories can be. It builds on the foundation of the Infinity Saga but says, hey, it's time for something new, something more personal, something that shows even the most fractured heroes have a place in this world. In the grand scheme of things, Thunderbolts doesn't just stand alone as its own film. It redefines how we see superhero teams in the MCU. By introducing anti-heroes, the film forces us to reconsider the traditional hero-villain dichotomy that's been central to the franchise up until now. It's the beginning of a new era in the MCU, and it's not just about the action or the spectacle. It's about the deeper, more human connections between these flawed characters and the complicated world they have to navigate. And that, my friends, is what makes this film a game-changer. Budget and box office. Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, let's talk money. Everyone loves a little bit of behind-the-scenes financial gossip, right? How does Thunderbolts stack up when it comes to its budget and box office performance? Did the dollars spent on the film match the quality we see on screen, or was it more of a what were they thinking situation? And the big question, did it break the bank or leave the studio wondering, where did all the cash go? First, let's start with the budget. Now, this movie wasn't exactly cheap to make. We're talking about a film packed with heavy hitters from the MCU, a whole new team of antiheroes, elaborate action sequences, stunning special effects, and a marketing campaign that was impossible to miss. So, Thunderbolts was sitting comfortably in the mid to high budget range, especially for a film in the superhero genre, where the expectation for jaw-dropping visuals and stunts is sky high. The budget was in the $200 to $250 million range, which is pretty standard for these big Marvel films, though you'll find that some of the more recent titles have exceeded even that. But here's the kicker, the budget doesn't always tell the whole story. You've got to consider the production quality in relation to that money. And for Thunderbolts, Marvel really went all out. The action scenes? Top-notch. The CGI and special effects? Absolutely stunning. They weren't skimping on the big set pieces or the visual flair, and the final product shows. You can tell the money went into making sure the film didn't feel cheap. Every fight sequence, every explosion, every moment where the characters are facing off against each other or the world felt like it had the right financial backing to be impressive. The design of the Thunderbolts lair, the costumes, the CGI landscapes, and even the way the storm clouds were shot in those dramatic moments were polished to perfection. It wasn't just about throwing money at the screen, it was about making it look worth it. Now, moving on to the box office. How did all that money translate into ticket sales? Well, when it comes to a film like Thunderbolts, there's always a lot of hype going in. The Marvel brand itself is a box office beast. You could release a film with little marketing, and just by virtue of being part of the MCU, it'll have a solid opening. But Thunderbolts didn't rely solely on the franchise power. It also got a significant boost from a solid marketing strategy. The trailers, posters, and teasers really hyped up the movie, especially for fans who had been following the anti-hero angle of the MCU. In the first few weeks, Thunderbolts absolutely raked it in. The opening weekend saw massive numbers, even for a mid-tier Marvel film. The blend of action, emotion, and star power was clearly a draw. But what's interesting is the way audience reception influenced its staying power. Word of mouth played a big role. People who walked in expecting just another action-packed superhero movie were pleasantly surprised by the depth and emotional weight the film carried. Sure, there were some fans who were a bit thrown off by the film's less traditional approach to heroism. But overall, Thunderbolts found its audience. By the end of its run, Thunderbolts wasn't just breaking even, it was profitable. The final box office gross came in somewhere around $700 to $800 million globally, which is a pretty solid showing for a superhero film, especially considering that it wasn't the top-billed Avengers-level event that some of the MCU's biggest hits have been. The movie had a strong international showing, particularly in markets that were excited about the anti-hero genre and the moral complexity of the characters. When you factor in streaming and home releases, the earnings climbed even higher. Of course, it wasn't the highest-grossing Marvel film of the year, but it didn't need to be. Thunderbolts wasn't aiming to be a billion-dollar juggernaut. It was more about proving that there's an audience for stories that aren't all about saving the world in a traditional sense. It was a smart gamble, taking a bit of a risk with its tone and characters, and it paid off. The marketing campaign definitely played its part in making sure the film kept momentum. You couldn't scroll through social media without seeing those promotional clips, character posters, and countdowns. The way the marketing played up the new team of antiheroes aspect really grabbed attention, especially from fans who were ready for something different in the MCU. The posters showing the fractured nature of the characters, and the trailers teasing the internal and external conflicts, made it feel like this was going to be a grittier and more emotional ride than the usual action-packed fare. So, was it a financial success? Absolutely. Was it a blockbuster sensation? Not quite. But that doesn't mean it didn't meet expectations. Thunderbolts did exactly what it was supposed to do. It brought in the cash, built up hype, and contributed to the overall momentum of the MCU. It wasn't a one-and-done film either. Its financial success paved the way for more stories that could explore this new era of antiheroes in the Marvel Universe. In the end, it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about how Thunderbolts positioned itself within the broader landscape of superhero films. It showed that even in a genre saturated with spectacle, there's room for something that takes the audience on a deeper, more personal journey, while still delivering the thrills and action fans expect. And let's be real, when a Marvel film can hit that sweet spot of profitable and impactful, it's a win in every sense of the word. Where to watch? Thunderbolts, 2025. Alright, folks, now we get to the fun part. How and where you can dive into Thunderbolts and experience all the action, drama, and anti-hero magic. Let's talk about your options for watching this film, because you're not just going to want to let this one slip by. First, of course, there's the classic route, heading to the theaters. Yes, this film was made with the big screen in mind, and if you want the full cinematic experience, that's where you should be. Imagine this. The lights dim, the screen bursts to life with massive action sequences, and you're surrounded by a crowd of fellow fans who are just as pumped as you are. There's something about the thrill of those larger-than-life moments, the massive explosions, and the jaw-dropping CGI that just doesn't hit the same at home. Whether it's the first time the Thunderbolts take center stage, or those climactic showdowns, the theater is where it's meant to be felt. It's about being immersed, feeling every punch, every explosion, every dramatic beat in the sound system's full glory. If you can catch it on an IMAX screen, you're in for a truly next-level experience. The colors pop, the sound rumbles through your chest, and the action feels like it's right in front of you. But we all know not everyone can always make it to the theater, or maybe you just want to enjoy the film from the comfort of your couch with a bag of popcorn. No judgment. Thankfully, Thunderbolts has got you covered. After its theatrical run, it will be available for streaming, so you can enjoy it in your living room whenever you're in the mood for some anti-hero drama. Now, where can you stream it? Well, this is where Marvel makes it easy. Expect it to land on Disney+, as is the case with most MCU films post-theatrical release. Disney+ is where all the Marvel magic comes together, from TV series to blockbuster films. And let's face it, there's something incredible about pausing and re-watching those emotional character moments or reanalyzing every piece of the action while you're cozied up at home. Plus, you get the added bonus of binging all those Marvel shows and movies that tie into Thunderbolts, so you'll be completely up to speed on everything that's happening. For those who prefer a digital rental or purchase, you won't have to wait too long either. Thunderbolts will be available for digital rental on platforms like Amazon, Apple TV, Google Play, and others. So, if you're not the wait-for-it-to-hit streaming type, you can snag a rental and experience it right away, even if you're on the go or just prefer to own your favorite movies. Here's a little pro tip for you. If you're a die-hard Marvel fan, you'll want to catch the movie in theaters to feel the full impact, and then when it hits streaming or digital rental, you can revisit it over and over. Plus, with Marvel's post-credit scenes, you'll want to catch every single detail on the first watch, and maybe a second or third time to make sure you didn't miss anything crucial to the larger MCU saga. Now, let's talk about the best way to watch it for the fullest impact. If you're lucky enough to have a home theater setup, this is the perfect film to showcase what that sound system and projector can do. Crank up the surround sound to feel the explosions vibrate through the walls, and watch the characters on screen in stunning clarity. But if you're working with a regular TV, you can still have an excellent time. Just make sure to catch it on the largest screen you can get your hands on. Grab some snacks, settle in, and let the MCU's dark and thrilling journey unfold in your living room. And of course, if you're someone who's all about theaters first, then don't wait around. Get your tickets early, because Thunderbolts is likely to be one of those movies that everyone's talking about as soon as it hits theaters. There's just something about the collective experience of sitting in a theater full of excited fans and experiencing all the emotional, action-packed moments together that makes it totally worth the trip. Whether you catch it in a theater or from the comfort of your couch, Thunderbolts offers a gripping experience that's sure to satisfy both hardcore MCU fans and those looking for a fresh, darker twist on superhero tales.